The gym smelled of varnish and party balloons. The plastic chairs creaked under the weight of families, and the names echoed over the loudspeaker like a chain of small victories. I clipped my cap shut, trying to keep it from slipping, and maintained the smile I'd practiced so many nights in front of the mirror to keep from trembling at the wrong moment. When they announced mine, the applause came from people I didn't know. It sounded beautiful and distant, like light rain on the roof of another house. My bleachers were empty. I looked first for my children, or for anything that resembled the color of the shirts I'd chosen for them. Nothing. The center aisle was a river of hugs. Mothers holding up flowers. Fathers tilting their phones to record better. My reserved seat in row L had a paper sign with my last name printed crookedly. The sign hadn't learned to applaud. I felt the weight of the mortarboard not on my head, but on my chest. It wasn't new to be the only one, the oldest, the one who arrived at the course at night with the smell of garlic on her hands because she ate dinner standing next to the stove. Still, in that rectangle of light I wanted to share. The diploma arrived in a stiff blue folder, with the college crest heat-stamped on it. The coordinator took my hand with the solemnity of someone who understands the struggle of getting there and said congratulations, looking me in the eye. I thanked him as if those 2 syllables could contain the rush of stairs, the 10:17 p.m. bus, the pages read in the bathroom to escape the noise of the classroom. I returned the smile and sat down. My phone vibrated in the inside pocket of my gown. A message from Marcos. "I'll be right there, traffic." Another 2 minutes later. "May be late." I scrolled up. "No, we're here." No pictures of the boys in their school uniforms. No silly jokes from my mom to disarm me. The names kept being called, and the gymnasium breathed at a rhythm that wasn't mine. I opened Instagram as a reflex, like someone learning to seek company where it isn't. The first story was from a colleague, her mother crying, her smile uncontrollably. The second, from a stranger, a close-up of her own diploma with electronic music in the background. In the third, I recognized the garden of a buffet I'd seen in magazines. Lights hanging like constellations, white tablecloths, tall glasses, a square cake with gold lettering. The caption, "Congratulations, boss. Historic night." The @ sign belonged to Marcos's superior. I pressed the sound. Laughter, toasts, a timid chorus of, "He deserves it." Between the heads, a familiar shadow. I fast-forwarded the video a centimeter. The camera turned, revealing a group with signs. "Proud of the family." My children smiled with the crooked teeth of those still changing. One of them grimaced. Marcos, in a dark blazer, raised his glass. I held the phone with both hands because I felt like I might slip. I returned to my timeline like someone returning to the living room after hearing something behind the door. Another story, this time tagged with a location. The same garden, another table, white flower arrangements in the center. The caption read, "With our." In the corner, I recognized my mother-in-law's patterned purse, propped on the chair, and my sister-in-law's profile, leaning forward to get a better look. I turned the volume down and heard in the background a comment that came like a knife wrapped in sequins. "A man who supports us deserves it." Someone laughed out loud. The MC's microphone hissed back into the gym. The host called for more applause for this group that has overcome so much. I clapped obediently, as the skin on my face learned to hold itself steady over its bones. A classmate sat next to me and said her family almost didn't come because of the game. I nodded and asked if she wanted water. The world kept going. Mine was trying to relearn. When the orchestra dropped a tune, I opened the cake story again. Had been posted 15 minutes ago. If the party was there, the college was here. The miles between one congratulations and the next could fit inside an elevator. Traffic didn't explain it. My heart called for a break, but my mind kept working the way it had learned. Counting, cataloging, searching for light in the corners. I saved the video. I took a screenshot of the time. I opened the front camera and, for a second, stared at the woman in the gown in the glowing rectangle. There was proof that I existed, even when no one wanted to see. A new notification. Family group. A photo of Marcos next to his boss, arm around his shoulders, grinning shamelessly. My mother-in-law wrote "Men of Valor" with 3 bowl emojis. The same hand that uses embroidery to cover the sofa typed that on the keyboard in a hurry. I stared at the empty bleachers until my eyes burned. The gymnasium lights cast luminous circles on the varnished floor. A teacher adjusted a microphone. Another collected fallen programs. The ceremony was reaching that point where time seems to stretch. I stood, went to the bathroom door, and rested my forehead against the cool tile for a few seconds. The cold gave me focus. When I returned, I sat alone and breathed, counting my chest beats. My phone vibrated again. A new series of stories flashed at the top. I tapped the first one, and the camera panned lazily around the garden room. I moved on to the next. My finger paused before moving forward. The image was clear. A table, a laugh I'd known since childhood, a hand with clear nail polish tapping the tabletop as it spoke. The person turned to face the camera, ready for a toast. The video froze for a moment while loading, and I zoomed in with 2 fingers until the frame filled the entire screen. The woman raising the glass, smiling, was my mother. I drove home without music, with the sound of the street coming through the cracks in the window and mingling with my breathing. My mortarboard was on the passenger seat, my diploma on my lap, my whole body trying to figure out where to store what I felt. In front of the traffic lights, the red lights seemed like eyes watching me, asking if I still believed in belonging. The master of ceremonies' words echoed, but they were already meaningless. In that gymnasium, I was applauded by strangers and forgotten by my own. The gate creaked as if it knew it too. The house was dark, the smell of the industrial cake I'd bought at the bakery still lingering in the air, untouched. The table was set by itself. The chairs I'd imagined filled with laughter now looked like statues. I took off my shoes and sat there, staring into space. My phone screen flickered on the tabletop. A new message from my oldest son. "Sorry, Mom. Grandma said your ceremony was a small affair. That Dad would be upset if he didn't go to the party." I read it 3 times before replying. Couldn't. I leaned the device against the table and let the silence do what words couldn't. The ticking of the kitchen clock was the only proof that time still moved. In the early hours of the morning, I went to my room and opened my laptop. Inside was a folder he'd been filling with for months. File belonging, I named it that one sleepless night, after an argument in which Marcos said he didn't need a diploma to be someone. Inside the folder were small fragments, screenshots of messages, emails, reminders, bits of sentences that always seemed innocent. "A woman of your color has to know her place. Night classes are worth less. It's nice to see you trying." I collected these things not out of spite, but as a method. Because those who are discredited learn to document themselves. I opened an audio recording I'd recorded months earlier, one weary morning. My low, hoarse voice saying, "No one will convince me that studying is vanity." I closed my eyes and let that sound remind me why I'd started. The diploma on my lap was just paper. What hurt was the echo of voices that never wanted me whole. I opened a new document and began writing. Line by line, remembering the smell of the night bus, the times I slept with my textbook on my chest, the day I almost gave up due to lack of money. Memory was my way of breathing. Writing gave me back the air that neglect had stolen. Between lines, I thought of all the women who study in silence, pretending their fatigue is mild, smiling so as not to scare anyone. Women who hold the world together and still need to prove they have the right to dream. I imagined each of them sitting at that table with me, filling the empty space with their voices. I grabbed my phone and started recording a short audio. Not for them, but for anyone who might one day feel the same way. If you've ever been alone on a day waiting for love, sit here with me. The chair fits both of us. The difference is that now we won't be silent. Inscribe your voice wherever it fits, even if no one applauds you. I sent the audio to myself and saved it in the folder. I named it vaz_01.mp3. So I closed my laptop and looked around the room. The streetlight filtered through the curtains and streaked the floor with yellow. There, amidst the moonlight, I realized that emptiness can also be a record. That absence, when acknowledged, becomes proof. The phone vibrated again, new message. It was a photo sent by a classmate, the live broadcast of the graduation ceremony on the college channel. She wrote, "You looked beautiful walking up on stage. The only thing missing was for the crowd to scream your name. Press play." The camera panned the gymnasium, pausing for a few seconds on each student. When it was my turn, the lens made a strange movement. It focused on the hallway, then the bleachers. It stopped precisely on the empty chair with my name pinned to the back. That image remained there, static, for almost 5 seconds. Long enough for me to feel like the universe was filming me on purpose, to remind me that, even alone, I existed. I saved the video. I zoomed in on the frame. The empty chair looked like an altar. And, without realizing it, I began to plan what to do with that silence that the world pretended not to see. I opened Instagram again the next morning, even before breakfast. The emotional hangover from the night before still throbbed in my temples, and the sun streaming through the window seemed to mock what was left of me. I scrolled slowly, like someone preparing to face a wound they already know will burn. The party photos were still there, and multiplied. The garden that had once been just a backdrop was now covered in captions with golden hearts and words like pride, family and victory. One of the images showed the cake table. The same cake I'd seen on Instagram the night before, now with Marcos's boss's name written in icing. In the corner, my children giggled, holding signs reading, "Proud of Daddy." In another photo, my mother-in-law, in a lilac dress, wrote in the comments, "Real men inspire." I looked at it with a calm that wasn't peace. It was anesthesia. I opened the photo and zoomed in until I recognized my mother's gold necklace. She was in the middle of the table, glass in hand, smiling like someone who had never lied about being sick. Marcos's caption read, "The night of recognition. Gratitude to the family that always believed in me." Closed my eyes. The word always it pierced me like a needle. I was with him in the late nights when he said he couldn't stand work, in the times he cried in fear of being fired. And now the word always excluded me as if I were a forgotten footnote. I grabbed my phone and without much thought started saving everything. Photos, captions, times, location. In the bottom corner, the little location icon showed the same neighborhood he'd said was too far to get to in time for the ceremony. The lie had coordinates. In the family group, more messages. My sister-in-law. "The party was beautiful. You should have seen how Marcos was applauded." My mom sent a heart emoji and typed, "God honors those who work hard." I stared at the screen and felt my chest tighten. The cake in the photo looked enormous, adorned with white and gold ribbons. The glasses were raised, the smiles aligned. Everyone celebrating something that, somehow, I too had created but was never invited to celebrate. I remembered his first internship, when I studied at night and worked during the day to make ends meet, while he invested in the future. The words came back like echoes. "A woman who dreams too much forgets her home. These diploma things don't hold a table. Asterisk, a man needs tranquility, not competition. Asterisk. Microaggressions said with affection, the kind of poison that doesn't sting immediately." In the kitchen, the bakery cake was still there, inside its white box, untouched. I took a knife and cut a small slice. The frosting softened. The taste was too sweet, almost sickening. I swallowed with effort, like someone swallowing a memory that won't return. I sat down and began to write in my notebook. Date, my graduation. Occurrence. Total absence of family. Alleged reason. Coincidence with a work party. Evidence. Stories, photos, captions, schedules, confirmed presence of family. Writing calmed me. It was as if I were recording a crime against the soul, the kind of crime that leaves no visible mark but destroys what sustains the body. In the middle of writing, my phone vibrated. Message from a classmate. "I saw Marcos's photos. Are you serious that no one came to your graduation?" I typed, "Try." She responded with an audio. "Girl, I don't know how you managed to get up on that stage alone. I would have collapsed. You looked so strong. You even looked happy." I pressed play again just to hear that last sentence, even seemed happy. In the reflection of the window, I saw my own face. I remembered exactly the smile I'd made when the diploma touched my hand. It was the same smile I use when the world thinks it understands me. I opened the party photo again. In the background, behind the lights, I could see a large banner with the company logo and the phrase, "Recognition and loyalty." The irony was almost beautiful. Then I noticed something. On the table was the gift I'd bought for his boss, a box of wine with a silver bow. I'd wrapped it myself the week before, not knowing it would be delivered that night. I enlarged the image until the ribbon filled the screen and took a screenshot. I named the Philironicuns present.jpg. I closed the app and placed my phone on the table. My heart was beating slowly, as if I knew this recording had a greater purpose. The house was silent, the same silence that had accompanied me since high school. Only now it felt different. Not empty but waiting for something. In the corner of the kitchen, the clock read 11:07. The sound of the hands seemed like a reminder. They had erased me from a celebration. I, unknowingly, had just begun writing the story of how each of them would be remembered. I woke to the sound of notifications from the family group. Messages popped up one after the other. Hearts, applause, short videos of Marcos's party. In one of them, my mother-in-law said with a laugh, "He deserves it. He worked hard to get here." In the background, my mother nodded in agreement. I closed my phone before the video ended. I went to the kitchen, put some water on to boil, and sat at the table with my notebook open. The pen seemed to weigh more than usual. I wrote at the top of the page, "Inventory of absences," and I began to list, one by one, the small pieces of evidence that time had left. The email from the boys' school confirming that I had given advance notice of the ceremony date, the message in the family group with a digital invitation, which no one responded to, the shared calendar showing the scheduled date, and the event duplicated by Marcos with the name, "Boss's Party," confirmed. I got up and went to my bedroom. On top of the wardrobe, an old shoebox held mementos no one cared to revisit. Notes from the boys when they were little, birthday cards with shaky handwriting, receipts for overdue tuition I'd paid with my grocery salary. With each item I removed, it felt like I was dismantling an altar that only I visited. At the bottom of the box, I found the crumpled envelope from the university, the one with the last monthly payment slip. The same one Marcos had said he couldn't help pay because time was tight. I remembered the night I'd been counting coins while he'd gone out for a quick beer. That night, I'd sold an earring my mother had given me to cover the cost. I placed the envelope next to the notebook and continued digging into the past. I opened the bank app. The statements don't lie. On the same day I paid the monthly fee. He spent almost the same amount at a florist in the upscale neighborhood. I swiped up, curious. The purchase was made exactly on the date of the boss's party. My throat went dry. I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures of the screens, organizing everything into a new folder. I named it Priority Tests. As I did so, I remembered something my mother-in-law had said a few weeks earlier. A man needs a showcase, not a shadow. A woman who shows off too much scares away her husband's success. At the time I laughed politely. Now, the words echoed with a venomous taste. I opened WhatsApp and searched for the message she'd sent me the day before graduation. "Don't be upset if we don't go, dear. You know how it is. Company parties are important. And Marcos deserves it. You understand, right? Press play." Her voice came through the speakerphone, sweet and rehearsed. I saved the file and renamed it Family MP3. Suddenly, something caught my eye in the kitchen trash. The envelope from the florist. I picked it up with 2 fingers. On the back, the label showed the buyer's full name and the recipient. To Mr. Luis Castro, with admiration, Marcos. My stomach tightened. The dedication, written in his handwriting, was the same as the one he'd used on the cards he'd once written to me. I leaned against the sink and let the water run. The sound filled the room, drowning out all other noise. I stood there, watching the foam form, until I noticed something moving in the corner of the sink, the reflection of my own face in the stainless steel. There were dark circles under my eyes. My hair was loose and disheveled, but my gaze was steady. The pain didn't make me smaller. It made me lucid. I went to my makeshift office and turned on my laptop. Folders began to line up on the screen like silent witnesses. I added the mother-in-law's audio, the screenshots of the bank statements, the photo of the party invitation with the confirmed RSVP, and created a document with a timeline. Graduation invitation sent, confirmed read, purchase of gift and flowers. Same date. Confirmation of attendance at the boss's party. Transit messages during my ceremony. I looked at the ensemble and felt a bitter peace. There was nothing there that screamed revenge. Only the truth. And the truth, when well organized, has the power to make more noise than any scream. I saved everything in a new folder. Called Silences Confirmed. I closed the notebook and stared at the black lid for a few seconds. Outside, the sound of the gate opening. Marcos arriving. I looked around the kitchen, hid the shoebox in the closet, and took a deep breath. He walked in smiling, still smelling of the expensive perfume he only wore for important events. "Is everything okay, love?" he asked without looking too much. "Everything's great," I replied. And it was true. Not because I was at peace, but because, for the first time, I knew what to do with the silence I'd been given. As he put away his jacket, I thought, when absence becomes proof, the game changes. And in that moment, I understood that my absence in their lives was about to become presence in everyone's story. I washed my gown by hand that night. The suds rose slowly, greasy with souvenirs, and the water in the sink grew cloudy, as if carrying everything I couldn't cry out. The heavy fabric soaked in my hands reminded me of my own body, tired but whole. The smell of soap mingled with sadness and the sensation of a time that would never return. When the fabric slipped and hit the bottom of the sink, the sound was almost a sob. The cell phone rang on the sink. It was my mother. I thought about not answering, but I did. On the other end, her voice came softly, like someone speaking to a stubborn child. "Daughter, sorry, okay? We just stopped by quickly to pay our respects to Marcos. Everything coincided, girl. You know how it is, work parties. Future stability. We'll celebrate your graduation another day." Another day. Her words spread across the tile like cold water. "It's okay, Mom," I replied. "I understand." And I did. I understood the ancient custom of thinking that a black woman's victory is always secondary, of thinking that our happiness can wait. I understood that their silence was a legacy. When I hung up, I stared at the white wall and remembered how many times I had heard similar phrases. A woman your age should be grateful for what she has. Educated black women are arrogant. Asterisk, those who take care of the house don't need a diploma. Asterisk, none of them said with anger, all with the sweet tone of someone who believes they are caring. Poison wrapped in cotton. The water trickled through my fingers, and each drop seemed to carry a fragment of those voices. I wrung out my gown and hung it on the clothesline. The cloth dripped slowly, marking the floor with small circles that looked like planets rotating around the same void. I sat on the laundry room floor, my body pressed against the cold wall. The silence in the house was so thick I could hear my own heartbeat. I grabbed my phone and opened my notepad. I wrote a short sentence without thinking. There are absences that scream louder than any words. I saved it and, without realizing it, started recording an audio. My voice came out low, tired but firm. If one day you're washing away what's left of an achievement alone, and you feel like no one saw the effort that got you here, know that I see it. See you. And we'll still fill this silence with names. I sent it to myself and left it there, in the archived conversation. The living room clock struck 10:30 when Marcos entered. The sound of the key turning in the lock made me stand up. He smelled of alcohol and had the lazy smile of someone who feels absolved. "I can't believe that event went so well," he said. "The boss was very complimentary. He said he's going to put me forward for the coordination position. I think it was worth it, right?" The sentence pierced me like fine glass. It was worth it. I took a deep breath. "That's great, Marcos. And how was your graduation?" he asked, helping himself to some water as if doing a favor. "It was beautiful. See, I knew everything would work out." We'll do something at home to celebrate later. I pretended to smile. He walked up the stairs humming, and the sound of his footsteps grew distant, until only the sound of the wind in the curtains remained. I returned to the kitchen, sat at the table, and opened my laptop. The screen lit up my face, and reflexively, I saw my fatigue as if it belonged to another woman. I organized the folders I'd already made. Belonging, priority tests, silences confirmed. I created a new one, domestic echoes. Inside, I saved my mother's audio, my mother-in-law's, the screenshot from the party, and the sentence I'd just written. I named each file precisely, like someone archiving chapters of a story the world refuses to read. As I dragged the icons, I thought about how often women like me are forced to turn wounds into data systems to keep from going crazy. The difference is that this time, the file wasn't meant to remember the pain. It was meant to use it. I closed my laptop and rested my face in my hands. My heart still ached, but it ached differently, with method, not despair. Pain, when understood, becomes strategy. And if you, who are listening to me now, have already swallowed pretty excuses for ugly absences, leave your comment, tell your story. Because each documented absence is a new mirror, and every woman who writes her own silence has already begun her revenge. Outside, the wind swayed the clothesline. The drops falling from the gown formed a rhythm on the ground. And between one drop and the next, I realized the wait was over. Now was the time to act, and to transform the void into witness. The next morning, sleep wouldn't come. I paced the house like someone searching for a sound that had ceased to exist. Each step echoed on the cold floor. The wall clock ticked steadily, and the distant rumble of cars was the only sign that the world outside still revolved. I sat in the kitchen, opened my laptop, and let the white light of the screen cut through the gloom. The folders blinked in front of me like watchful eyes. I opened the most recent one, Domestic Echoes, and I realized that it wasn't enough anymore. The story needed to expand. I created a new folder, simple and dry name. Proofs of affection inside. I began to gather what remained of the marriage. Messages, notes, old photos. I wanted to understand where exactly love had turned into neglect. In one of the photos, we were in front of the college on my enrollment day. Him smiling, his arm around my shoulders. I remembered what he'd said that afternoon. Take the course, but don't forget that real life is here at home. I opened WhatsApp and scrolled through my archived conversations. Marcos's was full of banalities. Bring bread, dinner's in the oven. I'll be late. Among them, I found one from 2 days before my graduation. Are you really going to want me to go? There are so many people, I don't like these formalities. I replied with a smiling emoji. Soon after, a message I hadn't seen at the time. The boss scheduled the party for the same day. I can't refuse. And then, you understand, right? The "nah" at the end of the sentence felt like an order. I opened his laptop's history. His workbooks were all synced to the cloud. Curious, I clicked on a presentation named Final_Expansion Project PPTX. The first few pages had the charts I'd helped create, but at the end, there was something that made me catch my breath. Between the slides, entire sentences from my notes. The same ones I'd read aloud while he listened to me in the room, feigning interest. My words, framed by his company logos and colors. I took screenshots one by one. I saved them in the folder and renamed the files with the dates. With each screenshot, the sense of clarity grew. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was intellectual. In the kitchen, the clock read 2:47 when I heard my cell phone vibrate. A new message from my mother-in-law. Honey, I know you're upset, but Marcos needs to stay strong at work. A wise woman understands a man's role. You're strong, you'll understand. I laughed to myself. The laugh was short, almost silent. I grabbed my phone and saved the audio of her voice that came next. These diploma things are nice, but what really matters is who pays the bills, right? I recorded another audio in response, but did not send it. I'm the one who pays the price for my absences. And the receipt is signed. I saved the audio with me as a record. In the middle of the night, I went to the closet where I keep my household papers. Among bills and manuals, I found proof of a gift purchase. The same box of wine that appeared in the party photos. The buyer's name, Marcos Rodriguez. The same day as my graduation. My entire body went still. Not anger, not tears. Just a heavy, strategic silence. I spread the papers on the table and began organizing them. Wine receipts, screenshots of stories, audio from my mother-in-law, slides with my ideas. The mosaic of omission formed before me, clear as a developing photograph. I picked up my cell phone, turned on the voice recorder, and left it on the table. I whispered to myself, File 6, kitchen, 2:58 in the morning. Proofs of affection. Every time they said I would understand, I understand now. And what I understand no longer fits me. I turned off the recording and left the device there, recording the sound of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, the wind blowing against the window. Small sounds from a house that seemed to be sleeping, but wasn't. As the sun began to rise, the sky still gray, I sat down at my laptop and reviewed everything. I named the new final folder Interior Lights. I didn't know exactly what I would do with it, but one certainty grew. There is no darkness where someone is willing to look straight into it. And that morning, between papers, sounds and screens, I realized their love could be absence, but my lucidity was presence. Sunday dawned with the smell of burning coffee and the kind of silence that precedes decisions. Marcos slept in his room. His body turned away, as he always did when he wanted to avoid conversation. His face, in the dim light, seemed peaceful, the tranquility of someone who believes their mistake is well hidden. I, at the edge of the bed, observed that profile and thought about how many times I'd served as a mirror for his pride to shine through. I got up slowly, put on a loose t-shirt, and went to my makeshift office. The laptop light illuminated the room with that bluish hue that always reminded me of the early morning. I opened the folder. Interior Lights, the files were there. Photos, messages, audio recordings, receipts. Each one carried a part of who I was. Not just the pain but the lucidity. I glanced over the folders and realized they were no longer just evidence of betrayal. They were the portrait of an entire system, built on my patience. I took a sheet of paper and wrote at the top, Stages of the plan. Organize files in chronological order. Analyze who was involved. Decide the right time for exposure. Choose the audience. I smiled to myself at the last line. Audience. The word sounded familiar. It echoed like moral vengeance, not violence. The kind of justice that makes noise in the right place. For the next few hours, I reviewed each piece of evidence with the coolness of an analyst. I listened to the audio recordings of my mother-in-law and mother, one after the other, unhurriedly. I noted the tone, the pauses, the repeated justifications. You understand, right? These things are nonsense. The important thing is family. They all sounded the same. The same script that taught me to swallow my own importance in the name of harmony. I opened the party photos again. I noticed a detail that had escaped me before. Behind the main table, a banner with the company logo and the text Recognition and Loyalty Award. Employee of the Year. Loyalty. The irony was almost elegant. I pressed play on the video and saw my husband in a dark blazer, hugging his boss and thanking the family who always believed in him. Applause soon followed. In the corner, my mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The video froze just as she said, "He deserves it, my daughter is lucky." I paused the video and stood there, staring at her face, trying to understand when we stopped speaking the same language. Maybe when I started dreaming differently. I opened my personal email and wrote a draft to myself. The subject line was, "When silence becomes proof." The body of the text said, "It's not revenge. It's testimony. The world needs to know what happens when absence becomes habit and affection is measured by convenience. They always wanted me to be discreet. Well then, I will be precise." I saved the email. In the afternoon, I went out onto the porch. The wind carried the smell of wet earth and the distant sound of children playing. I picked up the diploma from the table and looked at the university crest. The paper was smooth, impeccable. In the reflection of the glass frame, I saw the face that had learned to endure in silence. I grabbed my phone and started recording a short video. Not to post, but to save. Today is Sunday. I'm here with my diploma in hand alone. They didn't come. But I came. And that's enough. Because their absence doesn't erase the presence of my effort. I saved the video in the folder Interior Lights, and left the device on the table. As night fell, I organized the files into a slideshow, each image accompanied by a sentence. I wanted to construct a clear, irrefutable narrative. Something that didn't require explanation. A mirror large enough for everyone to see themselves. As I moved files, the mouse cursor seemed to follow the rhythm of my breathing. Steady, controlled. I was no longer shaking. When I was finished, I saved the final document with a simple name. realrecognition.pptx. I looked at the screen and felt something new. Serenity. Because in that moment I realized that the most silent revenge is the one that is born of method. And that, deep down, what I was about to do wasn't destroy anything, it was just bringing to light what had always been there. On Monday, the office air smelled of fresh paper and stale coffee. Marcos was getting ready in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie with the same methodical calm as always. "I have an important meeting today," he said without looking at me. The irony almost made me laugh. Important was the word he used when he wanted to say unquestionable. I replied simply with a good luck, and he left, leaving the expensive perfume lingering in the air like an ego signature. As soon as the gate slammed, the house fell silent. I went to the office and turned on my laptop. I opened the file .realrecognition.pptx. I took a deep breath and took the first step of my plan. I connected my phone to the computer and copied the final evidence. Videos, screenshots, audio, extracts, the recording of my graduation showing the empty chair, and the video of the party with the whole family celebrating his victory. The contrast between the two images was enough to tell the story. I created a new presentation with the title in white letters on a black background. The true meaning of recognition. Each slide had a short sentence and an image. While I was receiving my diploma. Video from the gym, applause from strangers. They celebrated the absence. Photo of Marcos toasting with his boss. They said I would understand. Audio from mother-in-law and mother. I understand, yes. I understand everything. Photo of the flower receipt and gift. And now you will understand too. I watched the entire sequence 3 times. There was no screaming, no humiliation. Just facts. The coldness of the truth was more cutting than any speech. I sent the file to my corporate email address and to the course coordinators, who had requested images to be posted on the university website. In the body of the email I wrote, "Here's a visual account of what it's like to achieve alone. Perhaps it will help to show the invisible cost of certain public smiles." While I was waiting for the upload, a new message appeared in the family group. It was from my mom. "Daughter, your photo with your diploma is beautiful." Marcos sent it to the work group, and everyone praised it. I stared at that sentence for a few seconds. The attempt at belated affection felt insincere, but it served as confirmation. He was already using my conquest to enhance his own moral resume. I took a deep breath and decided this wouldn't just be a hollow post. It would be a mirror. He opened LinkedIn. The cover page was still old, a generic landscape. I replaced it with a photo of my diploma, the gym in the background, and the empty chair highlighted. I wrote, "On my graduation day, the seat reserved for my family remained empty. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, toasts were made." Sometimes recognition doesn't come from applause, but from the courage to stand alone today. I share this story not out of pain, but out of respect for all the women who study at night, exhausted, believing that it is still worth it. I added the graduation pictures and, at the end, the party video. Enough for anyone to understand the context without needing an explanation. Clicked on post. For the first few minutes, silence. Then notifications started pouring in like rain. Likes, comments, shares. People I'd never met were writing. I felt every word. "Thank you for saying what so many of us have been through. This empty chair represents more than you know." My post started to spread. Someone from the course tagged me. Another shared it with the caption, "That's what courage is." In the afternoon, I received a message from the HR department at Marcos's company. Good afternoon, Anna. Could you confirm whether the images circulating on social media are yours? Smiled. My polite tone hid my discomfort. I replied calmly, yes, they are. And every single one of them is true. Silence on the other side. I opened LinkedIn again. The post already had over 10,000 reactions and hundreds of comments. Local journalists began asking for permission to quote the story in articles about Black women and recognition. I looked at the screen and felt something new. Belonging without permission. I took my cell phone, recorded a short audio and sent it to myself as a record. Today they erased me from a celebration, but I turned them into a public lesson. And best of all, I didn't have to lie. I just had to show. The voice came out calm, almost serene. And if you who are listening to me now have ever felt forgotten in your own moment of victory, share it. Share so that silence loses its power. Share because every story told is a broken mirror, and each shard reflects the truth of those we were forced to hide. As night fell, I noticed that the wind coming through the window no longer had the same weight. It was the sound of something beginning. And for once, it didn't hurt. The next morning I woke up to my phone vibrating non-stop. Notifications, mentions, private messages. The post had gone viral. My still heavy eyes tried to keep up with the screen's frenetic pace. With each update, more comments, more shares. Women across the country were writing stories similar to mine, recognizing themselves in that empty chair. Journalists wanted interviews. Teachers were using the post in classes on racism and invisibility. And amidst all of this, Marcos's name began to appear between the lines. His first messages arrived around 9. Are you crazy? Delete this now. You are exposing me. I read them all in silence. The same silence he always used against me. A short time later the house phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was shaky, trying to hide her distress. Daughter, what was that you posted? Your father is shocked. Everyone is talking about it. Marcos is furious. Shocked by what, Mom? By what I experienced or by the fact that I told you? She hesitated. These things aren't washed in public. But silence doesn't clean anything, Mom. It just lets the dirt shine. I hung up without waiting for a reply. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was something else, a strength emerging. At noon, the college published my post on its official profile with the caption, "Stories that deserve to be heard." Minutes later, a local reporter called me asking to record an interview about overcoming adversity. I accepted, with a calmness I hadn't even expected. The interview took place that same afternoon. The studio was simple, but the microphone in front of me felt symbolic. When the reporter asked how I felt about exposing my own family, I looked directly into the camera and replied, I didn't expose. I illuminated. The shame isn't the woman who tells the story. It's the one who gave the story a reason to exist. Messages of support tripled. Black women, single mothers, adult students, all commenting on sentences that seemed written by multiple hands. Thank you for speaking up for us. That empty chair is mine. You turned loneliness into a manifesto. Meanwhile, in the family group, chaos reigned. My sister-in-law posted a message trying to justify what happened. People need to understand the context. It was a coincidence. But the responses came quickly. Her college classmates began commenting, asking how anyone could find it a coincidence to choose a party at the same time as their mother's graduation. Late that afternoon, Marcos's name began circulating in anonymous messages. Someone posted the video of the party, the same one that appeared in my post, with a new caption. As she walked on stage, he toasted the boss. Within hours, his company blocked comments on his official profile. I received an email from HR asking for positioning. I responded with the same file I had sent before. Realness recognition.pptxt and no more words. That night Marcos came home pale, his eyes hard. You destroyed me, he said through gritted teeth. No. I just removed the carpet from the stage where you were performing. They're demanding an explanation. The boss called me. They said it was irresponsible. And what do you think? That it was my irresponsibility to tell you. He fell silent. His silence for the first time felt small. I grabbed the diploma from the bookshelf and placed it on the table between us. This cost more than you can imagine. I'm not going to hide the price anymore. He tried to come closer, but I took a step back. You're going to delete that post. I am not going. Then I leave this house. It's already gone, Marcos. Only the body hasn't noticed yet. He stared at me for a few seconds, his face contorted, unsure whether to scream or beg. Then he grabbed his keys and left, slamming the door. I stood there, listening to the sound of the engine pulling away. The echo of street horns mixed with the pounding of my heart. I took a deep breath, opened my laptop and stared at the post. The notifications wouldn't stop. One message in particular made me smile. I'm a teacher at a public school. I showed your video to my students. One of them cried and said she wants to study, even if no one comes to her graduation. Thank you for existing. I read it aloud, savoring every word. Revenge had happened, and it was public, inevitable, moral. And in that moment I realized that the exhibition was not about destroying but about liberating. The light that once only illuminated their party now illuminated all of us. Wednesday dawned with a cloudy sky, yet the light seemed to shine through the curtains. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Mentions on news portals, invitations to live streams, messages of support, invitations from women I'd never met, saying they wanted to hear me, hug me, thank me. I walked around the house in silence, feeling as if I were living inside a story I'd been writing alone for years. Only now the world was finally reading it. The landline rang. It was from Marcos's company's HR department. The formal voice on the other end said, Ms. Anna, just to confirm, are the files and videos published authentic? They are. And were they shared by you personally? Try. A short silence. Thank you for the confirmation. Have a good day. I hung up and placed the phone on the table. The crisp ringing sound made me smile. Instantly, the family group was in turmoil. My sister-in-law tried to cover her tracks, saying it was all a misunderstanding. My mother sent a long, sobbing audio message, begging me not to destroy the family. I listened in silence. The family I was destroying was the one that had left me alone, and what I was rebuilding now was something much greater. My dignity. That afternoon, a journalist called asking for a live interview. The station was located in a small studio downtown, and I accepted. When I arrived, the reporter greeted me with a shy smile and teary eyes. You have no idea what you represent to so many people, Anna. I sat in front of the camera, and when the red light came on, the reporter began. Do you regret exposing everything publicly? I took a deep breath and replied, looking directly into the lens. Regret is the name given to courage after it changes the game. I didn't expose anyone, I just showed what existed. The problem is that the world still expects black women to suffer in silence. I just exchanged silence for truth. Backstage, the crew clapped. It was a small sound but full of meaning. When I returned home, the gate was ajar. Marcos's car was gone. In its place, a box sat on the stairs, his things. Folded shirts, perfume, an office mug with a company logo. No note. Just absence. I walked in, closed the door, and for the first time the silence didn't hurt. It was a clean space, ready to be re-inhabited. I went to the bookshelf, took the diploma out of its frame, and placed it on the dining table. On top of it sat a single flower I'd picked from the garden. Open your notebook and post. The true meaning of recognition had surpassed 200,000 shares. The university officially invited me to open the next graduation ceremony as the honorary speaker. The email said, "We want your story to inspire future classes. Your voice is needed." I felt my eyes well up. Not with sadness, with reparation. I took out my cell phone and recorded an audio message for the women who had been writing to me since day one. We learn to think that silence is elegance, that swallowing is maturity. But it isn't. Silence only protects those who never wanted us visible. Break the silence. Speak, record, write, publish. If the world doesn't want to hear, we scream anyway. I sent the audio and left the phone on the table. Outside, the wind rustled the curtains and the sun began to pierce the clouds. The house smelled of fresh coffee. As the clock struck 6 p.m., I looked in the living room mirror and saw something I didn't immediately recognize. A whole woman, not a victim, not a shadow. A woman who understood that revenge isn't destruction. It's reconstruction. And in that reflection, I realized that the justice I hoped for would never come from outside. It was born there, within my own bones, in the voice that finally learned not to ask permission to exist. That Friday, the sun seemed different, calmer, as if it knew it no longer needed to compete for space with anything. The street noise drifted in through the open windows, and for the first time in a long time, the sounds of people seemed distant, but not hostile. I was drinking coffee on the porch, my diploma on the table, and my phone vibrated at a rate that no longer frightened me. Now, every notification was a reminder. What was once pain had become an echo. A new message appeared among many others. It was from the college coordinator. Anna, this semester's graduation ceremony will be next Saturday. We want you to take the stage. Not as a student, but as a symbol of what it means to resist. It would be an honor for all of us. Took me a few seconds to respond. The invitation passed through me silently. I could smell the gym again, the cold lights, the echo of names being called, and the empty chair. Only now the image didn't hurt. It propelled me forward. Reply. I'll be there. During the week I prepared my speech. Not a speech of revenge, but of legacy. I wrote it by hand like someone drawing scars. The words came softly but sharply. I didn't want to preach anything. I simply wanted to say what I learned from silence, and how it can become language when we have the courage to break through the sound. On Saturday, the gymnasium was full. New lights, flowers lining the edges of the stage, the same golden college crest hanging above the curtain. I dressed in white. I entered slowly, the sound of my footsteps mingling with the applause. This time there was no empty seat. In the center of the bleachers, dozens of black women, students, mothers, teachers, had come to see me. Some held makeshift signs with quotes from my post. The empty chair is now a throne. When the microphone was handed over, I took a deep breath and let my voice come out clear and firm. A while ago, I stood on this very stage alone. The chair with my name on it remained empty, but my story did not. I discovered that solitude is also a witness. I discovered that silence is not peace. It's the absence of listening. Today I stand here again not to point fingers, but to remind you that we no longer need to ask for space. We occupy it. The gymnasium fell silent. Then a wave of applause. I saw tears on the faces of women who might have been experiencing what I had. The same kind of polite erasure the world calls normal. Later I received flowers. None from Marcos. None from the family. But they came from students, from teachers, from women who said, "Thank you." And fist hankswayed more than any forgiveness. I returned home with the dress still smelling of someone else's perfume and euphoria. In my email inbox, a new message. Article confirmed. Your story will be published tomorrow in the main section. Headline: The woman who turned absence into a stage. I smiled to myself. Revenge had changed form. It was no longer against anyone, it was for me. I took out my cell phone and wrote a short public message. Not every empty chair is loneliness. Sometimes it's just the space saved for who we're yet to become. The reactions came quickly. Hearts, comments, shares. But what touched me most was a direct message from a 22-year-old. I was going to drop out of my course. No one in my family supports me. But after your story I decided to continue. I want you to know, at my graduation if no one shows up, I'll still be in one piece. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The pain that had grounded me now gave strength to others. Outside, the sky was beginning to darken, but inside me there was a serene light, the knowledge that their silence would never again define me. And while the world slept, I realized I no longer needed to be understood. I just needed to be remembered. The morning after the article was published, I woke to the sound of the doorbell. The delivery man held a heavy brown envelope bearing the university seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. Ana Rodriguez, your story rekindled something that time tried to erase. It's not just about graduations or absences. It's about the right to exist out loud. On behalf of the institution, we thank you for transforming pain into light. And we invite you to teach as a guest professor next semester in the module Invisible Voices. Coordination of the Humanities course. I stood still for a few seconds, reading each line slowly, as if needing to confirm whether the world had truly changed sides. Then I pressed the letter to my chest. The wind blowing through the window seemed different. It no longer carried dust, but a beginning. I made coffee, looked out the balcony, and saw the sun beating down on the wall. The same sun that, months ago, illuminated my solitude now gently filtered through the cracks. In the reflection of the glass, I didn't see a wounded woman. I saw a woman in the spotlight. I took my cell phone and recorded a video, unrehearsed, without a filter, just with a natural morning light. I used to believe that recognition meant being applauded. Today, I understand that it means being remembered by those who also need courage. If you ever felt alone at a time when you were waiting for love, I want to tell you, their absence does not cancel out your presence. Subscribe, share, speak up, shout if necessary. Because every time we remain silent, the world erases a possibility. I posted the video and left my phone on the table. I didn't care about likes or views. This was a record, a closure and a new beginning. That afternoon, I went to my closet and took out the gown, which still smelled of soap. It was dry, clean, and stain-free. I put the fabric on, slowly closed the buttons, and looked at myself in the mirror. The face reflected was no longer that of the woman who cried in the graduation bathroom, nor the one who silently collected exam papers. It was that of someone who survived her own omission and chose exposure as freedom. Next to the diploma frame, I pasted a new photo, the one from the recent ceremony, the packed gymnasium, the posters with the quotes from my post, and behind me, the women who came to see me. Chairs filled with voices. I sat at the table, picked up my notebook, and wrote the last note on the final page. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is rest. I closed my notebook, turned off the lights, and watched the late afternoon light flood the room. Outside, children played, cars passed, the world went on. And I understood that my revenge was never to make anyone pay. It allowed me to live in peace without having to prove that I deserved to be there. Because when a black woman turns silence into words, the absence in symbol, and the pain in legacy, no one else can say she doesn't belong. And if you've made it this far, breathe with me. Sign up, tell your story, and never be silent again. The empty chair is now the stage. And it's yours.